The Omen II, otherwise known as Damien, Omen II, came out in the year 1978, and it is the sequel to The Omen, and it takes place 7 years after the events of the first film. Now Damien is a teenager, and he's living with his aunt and uncle after the mysterious, or I guess suspicious, deaths of his parents in the last film. And throughout the runtime of this film, his aunt and uncle, primarily his uncle, gets warned over and over again that his nephew is probably the Antichrist, and you should be warned, and he should probably die or bad things will happen. All the meanwhile, Damien gets to learn a little bit more about who he really is and what that means in the long run. Narratively, I would say that The Omen 2 doesn't really add that much to what we already saw before. It's essentially the same exact story as the first film, with a few things added here and there. In the first film, you had a lot of warnings to Damien's parents about who he is and you need to kill him, and nobody believed all these warnings, of course, until people started dying left and right, and then they had to do something about it. Same exact thing happens in this movie, almost to a T. It's just that all the people are basically dead in the first movie, so now the functions of those people are replaced by aunt, uncle, and other random people throughout the film. The parts of the movie, however, that take a little bit of a turn, change things up a little bit, is that there's only slightly, more focus on Damien. In the first movie, you barely even saw him, I swear. He was in key moments, yes, but it's really his, subconscious through the eyes of these hellhounds in the first film, and in this one, you got, a raven or a crow that's doing the same thing that the dog did in the first, but you almost never see Damien himself do anything. It's just the idea that one day this kid will grow up to be Darth Vader. The Antichrist. I like the elements of this film that actually included Damien a little bit more because that's what was missing in the first film. However, once again, I could have used more of it. Specifically because the narrative of the film basically does do a copy-paste job of the first, and we already saw that before. Show more of Damien, because his stuff is actually legitimately good. You can also tell that there's a little bit of a better grasp on cinematography and editing in this film. I mentioned in the first one that nothing behind the scenes really stood out to me all that much as in iconic or memorable or anything like that. The sequel, even though it doesn't have the best narrative in the world or original, had a better vision behind what they wanted the film to look like and how they wanted it to play out. So that's good. One of the main concerns a lot of people have, though, when it comes down to The Omen 2 or any of the subsequent sequels, was that one of the grabs of that first film was the fact that you have an evil kid. And it's easier to sell evil kid being legitimately scary than evil teenager being rebellious, because that's something that all teenagers do. But I will say, I don't know how it was back in 1978, but nowadays, in modern day, creepy kids films are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. I mentioned that in my last review. It really just comes down to preference, what you prefer to see from a movie like this. And plus, you don't want the film to be subjected to being only in a gimmick category, generalizing the audience to only going to see your movie because there's a creepy kid. In all actuality, the actual point of the series, in my opinion, is this is the coming-of-age story, or origin story, I guess, of the Antichrist. And there are a few Antichrist movies, but usually they're in the ballpark of Christian movies like Left Behind, which have a completely different tone and vibe, obviously, than The Omen. So I don't really care that the kid was creepy in the first movie. I just wanted to see more of him, and I got to see a little bit more of him in the sequel with this teenager playing him, but again, not enough. I want to know more about his upbringing, and there's a little bit of a tease at the end to showcase more of that. I will say, though, I'm starting to appreciate the kills that you see in the movie a little bit more and more. Even though Damien's not really at the scene of the crime every single time, it's like his subconscious is there, his inner id is there killing these people, and what it looks like from the audience perspective is basically Final Destination. So all of these terrible things are happening, but they're things that could, they could legitimately happen. A little bit over the top, yes, but things happen, freak accidents occur, and people die. And the same idea can be seen in Final Destination as in here. So instead of, I think it was the Angel Death in Final Destination, or just Death himself, like the Grim Reaper, we're talking about the Antichrist. So both the first movie and this second movie had this element of kills that were very similar to each other, but the sequel definitely understood that it should be upping the ante of what you saw in the first film. You saw a couple of good kills in the first one, but this one there's a lot more, which emphasizes Damien's maturity, I suppose, and as he grows, so too does the number of bodies that start piling up, but that also allows the film to really dive deep into how to film these scenes realistically. And how they did it wasn't too bad, especially for the late 70s. Still a lot of practical effects and gore going on there, so I'll be interested to see how the series takes it from this point forward, and how the remake did it, or how this prequel that just came out did it, because I'm sure they did something with CGI and it probably looks terrible, especially the remake. Mid-2000s, yeah. Overall, I enjoyed the movie. It's just not as good as the original, just because it was a little bit too apprehensive to come up with something a little bit more original for the primary story. That's the stuff that was taken directly, copy-pasted from the first movie, but there is stuff in there that's good. There's some stuff behind the scenes that's good, but again, it's just not as good as the first because of that. So I'm just going to be giving this a B- letter grade. I gave the first one a B, gave this a B- just because you're talking about missed potential. You cannot watch this movie without watching the first, which is sad given the fact that it basically is the first movie, just on repeat. So I'm hoping that the third film does something a little bit differently and offers the audience some more originality, a deeper dive into Damien's backstory and future as the Antichrist, and I hope that he's going to be the main character. That's actually what I've wanted from day one. I want him to be the main character of his own movie. But yeah, what do you guys think about Damien Omen II? Are you a fan of this series? Why or why not? And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review for this Omen series. And until then, peace out.
Omen II, child of the night, in your gaze, the future's bright, a beast ascends, the truth unfurls, a crown awaits as darkness swirls. So sing the song of a child's fate, of power's lure and love's late gate. Damien's path set in stone, a world